Hey everyone, it's me, Jason. That's Jason. It's time for Rental Reviews Part 2.
And it's Adventures in Pop Culture.
Adventures.
Welcome back.
Yeah. So last time we did Kevin Smith films. That was a lot of fun. Got some nice feedback. It is my turn to pick what we watched. And I decided we each pick a Hitchcock film.
Sweet, yeah. This was a lot of fun.
Each got it from this nice Blu-ray set of Alfred Hitchcock films. We got a lot of Hitchcock VHS and some DVD and whatnot, but it was really sweet watching those movies on Blu-ray.
They did such a nice job.
Yeah, the transfer
I think
line
there's
was amazing.
How many are there? 18 different movies?
That's a lot. Maybe not quite 18. It's a lot. 14.
Yeah. Oh, 14 different Alfred Hitchcock movies on this. Definitely full.
I love
Definitely
Blu-ray.
full.
We don't watch a lot of Blu-ray, but Blu-ray is impressive.
Oh yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Definitely. So crisp.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So clean.
Clean. So fresh. So clean.
So fresh and so clean.
Well, I'm going to go first.
Good.
I picked Family Plot. I wanted to watch... I've definitely not watched all 53 Alfred Hitchcock movies. Nowhere close. But I wanted to make sure to watch something I had never seen. And I didn't realize it at the time. But in picking Family Plot, I actually picked Alfred Hitchcock's final movie. His 53rd movie.
So you picked that without knowing that.
I didn't know.
That's...
I just kind of picked it up. I just looked at the back and then it kind of flipped through this book. And I was like, well, which one have I definitely not seen and sounds interesting? So I picked Family Plot.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm excited to hear about it.
So I'll get right into it. Family Plot is based on a book called The Rainbird Pattern. And that makes about as much sense as to what the story is actually about as Family Plot does, which isn't that much.
Yeah.
Family Plot is a little closer to like actually being about the movie, but not really. Released in 1976, it is exactly 2 hours long. Okay, so I will give a brief rundown of what the plot is, because it's very interesting and very good, but it's confusing.
Yeah.
So it's basically two man and woman teams of con artists.
Oh, teams.
And they're both like couples, like sexually, like two of them more so than the other. Like they're both intimate with each other, but like they're both like kind of back and forth, like, oh, we dislike each other, like this fun banter. So the one team is played by Karen Black and Willem Devane. And if you look up these two, they combined have 323 screen credits when it's all said and done. Like, these two have been in everything. That's an enormous number of things. And they get more or less top billing on the film. Karen Black, especially at this time, was more over than some of the other people in the movie. The thing is, though, she was awful.
Really?
She was horrible in this movie. Acting-wise, yeah. I thought she was horrible. And William Devane was slightly better. And Hitchcock himself even said he regretted casting these two and really liked the other team of Barbara Harris and Bruce Dern. Bruce Dern was very good. For me, Barbara Harris was outstanding in this movie.
Huh.
I mean, I don't think I'd ever seen Barbara Harris in anything else before. I was familiar with the name, but I watched it without looking anything up. And Barbara Harris was so funny and like quirky and like natural like acting and like getting what the story was about. So much better than the other three.
That's cool.
And so much so that it turns out she was nominated for a Golden Globe for this movie. And I honest to God didn't know that until afterwards when I looked it up. It's like, makes complete sense. Because she outacted everyone.
Jeez.
Yeah. Okay, so back to the plot. Karen Black and William Devane are two people that serially kidnap people, like really well-off people, and hold them for ransom. And they're exceptionally good at it. And they have a very elaborate like room set up and stuff. And this is what they do for a living. And they're super good at it. So like, they're these really polished con artists. Barbara Harris and Bruce Dern are not at all polished. She is like a fake psychic that cons people, and he's like a really bad private investigator / actor / taxi driver, and they just kind of bumble around. But as her being a psychic, she manages to come across this woman that wants to find her sister's son, who is the heir to this enormous fortune, through like fake psychicness.
Yeah.
And it turns out that the son is William Devane, and he's not quite aware of this. So Bruce Dern and Barbara Harris get on the trail of these two serial kidnappers, and they think they're after them for completely different reasons. And so it's just like a comedy of errors,
Okay.
like them kind of going back and forth. And I won't ruin it by saying who ends up on top, because it's totally worth watching. It was a fun movie.
Yeah. It sounds
Yeah,
complicated.
it is.
That's a detailed
It is.
plot.
I could even have things about the plot wrong, as far as like if William Devane knew he was the heir to this fortune, because there's this other side plot where he tried to get rid of his identity years back, so much so that he hires this other guy that initially helped him get rid of his identity to try to kill Barbara Harris and Bruce Dern. And it's awesome because it leads to this very Hitchcockian, it's not a car chase scene, but how does somebody describe it? A runaway car ride. And it's from 1976, so it's like super cheesy, and like they're clearly in the car not driving, and there's all this ridiculous things going on in the background, like they plow through like this group of motorcyclists, like that kind of like action sequence where it's like a screen behind and stuff.
Screen behind them, yeah.
Super fun to watch, but like does not necessarily hold up well, but it's crazy fun.
Well, that's funny too, because not all movies from the 70s relied on that stuff. There's like really good chase scenes in different movies.
Oh yeah, I mean the 70s are known for well chase scenes.
Oh yeah,
but yeah, this one was not one of them, but it was super fun. So yeah, that's pretty much how the movie goes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
As far as that movie, yeah. So let's see here. Okay, so then at the end of the movie, it doesn't completely give it away what happens, but Barbara Harris looks at the camera and winks, and it like breaks the fourth wall, which Hitchcock wasn't necessarily really well known for, but it's kind of described as a fitting end to his final movie. And it wasn't planned,
cool.
and Barbara Harris was just doing it as like a joke, but Hitchcock decided to leave it in.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, and he didn't know this was going to be his final movie, but it kind of works.
Cool.
And in fact, his final movie was supposed to be something called, oh, I wrote it down here.
The Short Night?
The Short Night. Yeah, you saw that before I did. So he was working on that at the time of his death. Didn't quite get around to developing it fully. I'm surprised nobody else picked that up and was, as a tribute, finished it for him.
Oh, that's cool.
Kind of like with how Spielberg did for AI.
Oh, sure.
Or
Yeah.
Kubrick. So Hitchcock was dead. He died in 1980 at the age of 80, which is kind of interesting. Kind of very, I don't know if that's actually anything, but
How does that tie into this movie?
just that, just kind of just something interesting about
Oh,
Hitchcock.
sure. Yeah, that is cool.
It's not everything's directly about the movie. Some of the other people that were offered roles in this movie, Al Pacino,
Like bread rolls?
just
Oh, now you know my name. Wow.
Al Pacino was offered a role, but Bruce Dern had a funny story where he was like, "Hey, Alfred, why am I in your movie?" And this is going to be a horrible Hitchcock, but he goes, "Mr. Packenow wanted $1 million, and Mr. Hitchcock does not pay $1 million." And he put together that he was talking about Al Pacino when he was saying Packenow. So he was offered a role. Burt Reynolds was offered a role. Faye Dunaway was offered a role, and Jack Nicholson were offered a role.
Wow.
They people might have been a little more interested if they would have known it was going to be Hitchcock's last film.
Oh, definitely.
But there were periods where Hitchcock really wasn't as respected as he is now. He never won an Oscar in his lifetime. He got the Lifetime Achievement Award.
Sure.
He never officially won an Oscar, which is pretty crazy. Let's see here. Like I said, Hitchcock was not happy with Karen Black and William Devane's performances, and I can see why. Because it's when you watch it, like Bruce Dern and Barbara Harris are just so much better.
Really?
Yeah,
Huh.
Barbara Harris especially. I thought she was so good. This was the only film that John Williams did the score for.
Really?
Yeah, John Williams, if you guys don't know who that is, literally did everything, or does everything.
He's
Star
like Star
Wars,
Wars,
Harry
yeah.
Potter, Superman, everything Spielberg's ever done. The list goes on and on, like crazy number of credits. But the only one he did for Hitchcock.
But this is probably like the start of his career. Around the start, right?
He had done things, definitely early on in his career.
Sure.
But he had done things before. He is prolific. I mean, John Williams has scored the soundtrack for 353 movies.
That's insane.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, my favorite line of dialogue from the movie is, for some reason, Barbara Harris is like, just loves Bruce Dern and wants nothing more than to have sex with Bruce Dern. And Bruce Dern is constantly like, "No, baby, I'm too tired." Man, horrible Bruce Dern. But there's a line that Bruce Dern goes, "I'm too poop to pop." I love that line. IMDb on that site, it got a 6.8.
Okay.
Rotten Tomatoes, it sits at a 95%, but it hasn't been reviewed enough to have a consensus.
Okay.
Which makes sense. I mean, it's not a real well-known Hitchcock one.
Sure. 95 is high. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's probably. I really did enjoy this movie. It's definitely not perfect. I think even Hitchcock wouldn't consider it probably one of his best. I would give it a 7. And I like everything. I do like everything.
Yeah.
And for 7 for me is actually pretty low. But I did really enjoy the movie, and it makes me want to. I don't think I'll ever get around to watching all 53 Hitchcock movies.
Oh.
That would be such a task. But it makes me want to watch more.
Oh, definitely.
Just so everybody knows, I would say Rope is my favorite Hitchcock movie of all time.
Oh, that's cool.
Love Rope.
So I don't know that I've seen very many Hitchcock movies at all. And me watching the one that I picked might have actually been the first time that I've actually sat through a Hitchcock movie. Besides Psycho. I definitely have seen Psycho, and that's a really good one. But I picked the 1963 movie The Birds. Definitely a classic, and definitely one of his most well-regarded movies of all time. It has a pretty cut and dry plot. Really, it's that they're in this small town, and the birds start attacking people. They start flocking together and attacking people. There's some really awesome scenes in this movie, and my absolute favorite scene is in the schoolhouse, where the main actress is, I didn't even bother to write down actresses and actors.
Isn't it like Tippi Hedren?
It is Tippi Hedren. You're way better at that stuff than I am. But she goes to the schoolhouse to warn the teacher and the children that there's this attack coming. And so she goes inside to talk to the school teacher, and the school teacher kind of waves her away and says, wait outside. So then she goes outside and she starts smoking a cigarette. And slowly, all of these crows start to get onto the gym equipment that is right behind her. And it'll like cut to her smoking a cigarette, and then it'll cut back to the gym equipment, and it'll start having like jungle gym is what I mean. And it'll have like 2 birds on it, and then it'll cut to her, and it'll like wait forever and hold on her, and then it'll cut back, and it'll be like 15 birds. And it's like, oh man, it's like really building suspense. And then all of a sudden it cuts to her, and it holds there forever. And then it cuts back, and there are hundreds of these crows that have landed on there. And it's such a cool scene, and it's so well done. And it like really is super eerie.
Nice.
And then from that, it leads into like they do a fire drill, which brings all the kids outside to run away from the birds, which is kind of weird, but definitely entertaining. And then my second favorite scene of the movie is the attack on the house on the hill. And that scene is so cool because the main actress, they're like starting to board up everything, and the birds are like kind of starting to get through, like their beaks are pecking through the doors and stuff like that. So she goes up to the main bedroom upstairs, and no, it's the attic upstairs is where she goes to, and she gets inside and she closes the door behind her, and there's already tons of birds in here because they're coming in through the window or whatever. But they filmed that scene for 5 days, and it like ruined this actress, Tippi Hendricks.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Tippi Hedren, I think.
Tippi Hedren? Sure.
I think.
They threw birds at her to get some of these shots.
Dead birds?
No, live birds.
Ooh.
Some of the handlers would take the birds by their talons and swipe down at her. And like if you go frame by frame, you can see black hands, like in gloves, and they would just swipe down to get some of those shots. They tied birds to her so that they would stay on her and attack her and everything like that. And on the 5th day of filming, after she had been done for a while and they were doing other things, they needed to go back in and grab her to continue filming, and they could not wake her up. Like, they just could not rouse her from sleep, and she ended up spending an entire week in a hospital because she was so exhausted from that scene.
Wow.
Yeah, so they had to halt production, and some of the other scenes they had to continue on finally because they're like, we have to get some of this stuff done. So they used a stand-in for some of the stuff and then superimposed her face on different. It's specifically when they're walking her down the stairs from that scene. They used a different actress and then superimposed her face on that actress.
Is it noticeable?
Later. No, I mean it's a really, really well made movie.
Oh.
My big issue with it's a good movie and I like it. There is no ending to this movie. Like after that attack on the house on the hill, they get together and they go outside and all the birds are super calm, but it's like hundreds of birds everywhere. And then they get into their car and they're getting ready to drive down to the town, which has also been affected by a bird attack. Mm-hmm. And they all get in the car and they like barely start to pull away, and then it cuts. So you're like, there's just no ending whatsoever. And they talk about what the original ending was supposed to be, was them driving through town and seeing all the devastation that had went on, dead bodies laying everywhere from these bird attacks, and then they're going to continue on to San Francisco, and at that point it would end and be like, oh boy, was San Francisco affected? Like, is this like a worldwide thing? But it just completely ended. So I'm not in love with that ending, because it just, it's not even like a good cliffhanger. It's just like, well, why didn't they shoot just a little bit more? But they did talk about it in a making of featurette that I watched on this, and they didn't shoot the car going through the town because it would have been so hard to film. And at that point they had already blown through their budget and it just wasn't worthwhile to do it. So definitely a good movie. And now I just want to kind of start to go into some of the different ways that they got these awesome shots of the birds. They filmed for weeks at a time at dumps, at different city dumps, to get really good background pictures of birds flying around. So I thought that was interesting. For the kids running away from the birds after the schoolhouse scene, they literally tied birds to the kids' collars so that they would just stay on them and like flap and attack them and stuff like that.
Wow.
They would put meat on camera lenses and just leave them setting forever and filming, so that birds would swoop down and attack the cameras to get the meat, to get some of the shots, which I thought was really good. Some of the actors and actresses had to have bird seed in their hair so that the birds would actually come down and attack them. They needed so many birds for that crow scene. I mean, they used some cardboard cutouts and some not real birds to like fill in the spaces, but they needed so many crows that they couldn't find enough, so they had to start growing their own crows.
Wow.
Which is a weird thing to think of. And then, so they trained these birds to like attack people in such vicious ways that after filming was done, those birds had to stay in like bird sanctuaries for the rest of their life, because you can't release birds like that back into the wild because they're going to attack people. Like, that's what they've been trained to do. So that's pretty funny. The Rod Taylor was the main actor, and he actually had a rival on set named Archie, who was a bird. This bird had been trained specifically to attack Rod Taylor.
That's awesome.
And Rod Taylor would get there in the morning and be like, is Archie here today? And he'd be like, no, I don't think so. And then, like, I guess he would swoop down from some rafter and attack him and just be like, I hate this bird
That's
so
awesome.
much. And Rod Taylor's says that they were fed, and there's no real, like, actual proof to prove this, because you can't do this to birds, obviously, but they were fed a combination of wheat and whiskey so that the birds would be a little bit more docile and sit for some of the shots that they had to do.
Wow.
They also tried to use birds or magnets on the birds' feet and then attach them to gutters of houses to try to get some really menacing looks. Yeah. And the problem with that was that they would attach the birds to the gutters, and then they would like walk away, and the birds would after a while try to fly away. And so you have the gutter here, and the birds would just end up upside down because the magnets would shift. And so then they would just be like, well, this is horrific. Half of the birds are upside down for these shots. They use fake birds on wires, and they use cardboard cutouts also to get some of these shots. But they did a lot of work with like real birds, like really crazy stuff. Really crazy stuff. Now Rotten Tomato has this, and there's tons of critical reviews for this on Rotten Tomato, obviously. They gave it a 96%, which I think with a lot of Hitchcock's work, it's kind of hindsight is 20/20 on his stuff. But you know, it is a really good movie. I don't know that it's a 96% good movie though. IMDb has it at 7.7, which I think is way more of a fair review for it. And then I also, as my own review, gave it a solid 7. I like this movie. I think the ending could have been way better, but it's definitely good. And it definitely made me want to watch more Alfred Hitchcock movies.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to do my best to try to get through a couple more.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much what I have to say about birds.
That movie just, they wouldn't even, I mean, now it's all CGI, but wow, they would be in so much trouble now.
Well, but back then, what do they call that? SPCA, that like the human rights or no animal rights committee or whatever that existed back here. So they had to make sure that they weren't harming these birds, even in the ways that I'm describing this.
They let them do that?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yep. And like tied their beaks shut and stuff like that. Like feeding them whiskey and wheat, that you could not do. That's why you can't find proof that they actually did that. But all this other stuff was approved by animal rights groups. But you're probably right. They probably wouldn't let you do a lot of that stuff anymore.
That's it. That's fascinating.
But yeah. So that's it for this week's rental review.
Yeah, episode. It was nice doing stuff we're definitely not classic film fanatics. It was nice at doing this.
So that actually goes into what our next rental review will be, and whenever we get around to doing it. It's probably about every other week when these are going to come out. But we recently talked about some your Gary Cooper picture.
Super Duper?
Is what brought this on, and it's a genre that I don't like at all. So I'm just trying to open up my horizons a little bit more. And for our next rental reviews, we're going to do Westerns.
Oh, I didn't know you didn't like Westerns at all.
I'm just not that crazy about them. But it really seems like there's some classics out there that I should watch.
Yeah.
So it's very broad for this next rental review, but it's Westerns. You know, I imagine we're both going to pick critically acclaimed Westerns.
There's a lot. Boy, that'll be fun to pick something.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for watching, guys. We're doing 5 videos a week, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to see more. Remember, too sweet.
Two brothers in Nebraska, pop culture's what they love. Join them as they talk about all of their cool stuff. Adventures in pop culture.
I think we just delved into Jeff's psyche. Jeff! Let's hang out and do stuff! I don't want to be going down.